rather than having the same conversation 45 minutes. So thanks for being here, everybody. Here's the info sheets. You might already have one of these. No pressure to take one, but if you like having something in your hands to look at, you're welcome to take one and pass it. And then I'll email out everything we talk about today. I'll email out also. So if you don't want another paper in your life, feel free to just pass it on. My name is Jamie Morningstar, and for the last 12 years, I have helped to facilitate this trip, Go and Grow Colima. So today we'll just talk about what is the trip, why is the trip, what do you need to know, you tell me what you need to know, and we'll talk about that. Sorry. Tree risers are in the house. There's food. So it's fun to start a little bit with like, why do we do this? Why are we here? You know, for me, and tree risers can talk from their experience too. No pressure. For me, this trip is all about connecting with people. We talk about this all the time, but you know, the things that we do, the walls that we paint, the curtains that we fix, right? They're gonna tear and get smudged and get broken, probably within 17 hours of us doing it, right? The things that last are the memories that we're able to make with the kids, the ways that we're able to just keep showing up for the kids and the caregivers. It's us coming and investing our time and our hugs and our words and our broken Spanish into their lives, and that's really what counts and what matters. So I don't know, Steve, do you want to share a little bit of your like?
Sure.
Why do you? This is my husband, Steve. This is his. I don't know what 4th year. Fifth. I don't know.
2018 was my first year going middle.
But then there's COVID in the middle, so we don't know.
Whatever. Yeah. So I mean, one of the things. I mean, Jamie and the kids have been going for quite a few years, and then I ended up going when our youngest was able to go on the trip. She finally hit threshold 9. And for me, it was kind of like interesting to see like this whole entire trip through pictures, and then be there in person was really just kind of a like it like even seeing these pictures kind of like gives you a taste of what it's like, but being there really is different. But the thing that I remember, there was a kid my very first trip down who like our project was to fix up bicycles because they have a bunch of bikes and wear out really quickly. And there was this one kid who like kept like messing with my tools and was just doing this stuff, just kind of being a little squirrel. Because that's how kids are. And it was funny because he would like hide the tools, so I'd have to go find him and it because he wanted to interact. And so now seeing that kid being an adolescent in the adolescent home and being kind of like not a leader. I mean, like he's grown up. He's like one of the like more mature ones in there. So seeing that whole transformation and being part of that growth has been kind of cool to see that. So, yeah.
Tree Rises, anything you want to share about? Why this is special?
I've been once, and
Yeah.
Mark's been four times, so he's probably more of an expert than I am.
I mean, like what you said, going for the time where you're like investing the time with the people there, the caregivers and the kids. Besides the projects and the other fun things you do, are the things that stay with you for sure, and obviously mean a lot to them to make a huge difference in their lives too.
So really the focus of this trip, as you're hearing, is a lot less on the doing and the things that we do to share love, right? Not because they're inherently that valuable, and certainly not because we bring any skill. And that brings us to Kim.
We're running a little late.
No, you're welcome. Yeah, grab food. So Kim, do you want to share anything about why you keep coming back?
Yeah. It's just a great community, a lot of loving memories. Even also those kids don't have much, like they're just so grateful and appreciative, and the workers there, it's a great experience. And so yeah, I'm gonna keep on it. Yeah, and it's safe, it is safe. It's like, we all stay together, and but
Tree Rises are here. Well, thanks, Kim. So you got lots of different perspectives, and I think that's something that I love about this trip, is that we really try to put together a trip where there's ways for everybody, not something for everybody, but ways that everybody can lean into their strength. Hey y'all, welcome. Come on in. Yes, please, there's food. Grab food. But a place where everybody can be involved. And so, in terms of specific skilling, if you have skills, electrical, plumbing, welding, those are always useful, but those are not required. If you have skills in child snuggling, those are helpful, may be required. They may just be thrust upon you, regardless of how you feel about it. And so that's something that I love about this, is that it's a time for us all to come in our strength, in the things that we love, and to be a part of this community together. Kind of the arc of the week. It's a Saturday to Saturday trip. So Saturday we fly from Salt Lake to Guadalajara. It's about a 2.5-hour drive then from Guadalajara to Colima. And so Saturday is pretty much a travel day. Sunday we go to church. We'll talk about church. We'll usually take the caregivers or some of the older kids out to a fancy meal, which is really fun time together. Out in the country, get to see some of the country. We'll get oriented and situated, do a little orphanage tour. And then Monday kind of starts our daily routine. So every day we have some time that we spend with the kids. And that time, I kind of think of it as like sort of summer camp activities. So we do sports, games, crafts, and those are things that we organize as a team, that we decide what we want to do together. And so we spend some time with the kids, just giving them happy memories and fun times. And it's also a way to serve the caregivers, because if we're keeping them occupied, they don't have to. So that's time that we get to spend with the kids. And then the rest of the day, we spend doing projects around the orphanage. So people will often ask me, like, what kind of projects do we do? And I kind of say, like, think about all the things that don't happen around your house, and then imagine you have 100 kids. That's kind of all the stuff, right? So there's a lot of cleaning, there's a lot of painting, always so much painting. We've done projects like laying pavers, like under clotheslines, laying pavers so that it doesn't get muddy. We do sewing, so if you have any sort of skill in being able to sew a reasonably straight line. We end up doing lots of bed covers, curtains, and then also just repairs on kids' clothes. You know, there's a lot of stuff that just kind of nobody has the time to go like fix that hem. And so those are the things that we do during the day. The most important thing is that we're directed by the orphanage staff. We do what the staff needs. We don't do what we think is important, because we're entering their home, right? And so we do what we're directed by them, which would make the biggest difference to them. And then the evenings are kind of a mix. We'll have invariably 3 to 5 parties. There's always a lot of parties. They schedule a lot of parties for us. So there'll always be parties and dinners at different orphanage houses. We'll go out to dinner in town once or twice, because that's a really fun thing to do. And we'll also have some meals just in the hotel, because sometimes it's nice to just hunker down. Which brings us to the hotel. So we stay in a hotel that's about 4 blocks from the orphanage. So it's really convenient. It's an easy walk, which makes it really nice to be able to go back and forth as needed. If you're really dragging some afternoon, it's nice to be able to go back and take a snoozer. There is air conditioning in the rooms, and you probably have seen some pictures of the hotel. There's air conditioning in the rooms, and there is a pool, which is nice. I don't know if my kids would come back if there wasn't a pool. So, it's nice to have a pool. It just makes a big difference in the evening to be able to go splash around, and that feels really good. Hogar de Amor Orphanage is a ministry of Grupo Amor Church, which is a church a lot like CenterPoint in Colima. There are about 120 kids in care in about 10 houses in the city and state of Colima. Colima is the name of the state and also the city. And so we go to the city of Colima and the state of Colima. We work in a variety of the houses. We kind of go where we're pointed, and when we're placed. But kids in care are anywhere from birth all the way up to university and beyond. Segmented by age, gender, and where they're spaced and so that's a little bit about the orphanage. It's really good to talk about safety. That's always questions that come up rightfully, and so it's important for you to know we run a very transparent ship around here. Kalima is in the State Department anti-travel list, do not travel list, and so it is not a recommended tourist location within Mexico based on U.S. State Department. That happened about 5 years ago. Kalima, the state of Kalima, has been destabilized from a cartel perspective. There's a major port in Kalima, the port of Manzanillo. It's about 40 miles away from where we are. It's not, we don't go anywhere near Manzanillo, but that is under contestation between gangs. And so when that happened, and it kind of moved to the State Department red list, we just mourned and continue to mourn. Because it stops people from going. I mean, right, that's the point. I mean, but it's such a tough thing because, you know, we work and love people who are making their lives, right, in this place, and it is a beautiful place that we love, with beautiful people that we love. And then on the other side, you have, you know, some very real violence and hard stuff going on. We've been going for this will be our 12th year. We have not experienced any issues of safety or crime, big or small. We've never hit that as a team. And really, I think there are 3 main reasons for that. One is that we go there under the advisement of people who make their home in Kalima, right? People who have lived in Kalima their whole lives, right? And they know what is safe, what is advisable, what is a bad idea. And if there's anything that's a bad idea or any other direction that they want to point us, they do, and we listen because they are the experts in their lives and in their homes. So that's 1. 2 is that we try not to be dumb, right? We don't go out to bars at 3 a.m. We don't go out alone. We don't put ourselves in places where we would be more likely to hit questionable circumstances. And 3, I mean, we cover this trip in prayer and in faith. And so we have never hit an issue of safety. We try to be really wise, but it's also really important that you know and understand the risks and are able to make a choice that is the right fit for you and for your family. So we want to be really upfront about that. Also safety in terms of health. We get questions about health. We've actually never had someone need to go to the doctor on one of our trips. We've definitely had some people like out for a day or 2 with a tummy bug or something. Like we've had that, which is deeply unpleasant. But we've never had like a serious injury or illness. There is medical care that's available. Mexico has a socialized medical system, and it's really actually very easy, or comparatively easy to get care. We also carry insurance in case anyone needs to be extradited to the U.S. Like if somebody got really sick or really injured and needed to be flown back to the U.S. for surgery or some kind of medical care. We carry insurance so that's possible. Okay, we just kind of sandwich that stuff in the middle because it's less fun to talk about. It's really important, but less fun. And then, you know, who is this trip a good fit for? Again, you know, we try to create an experience where everybody can lean into their strengths and really be a meaningful part of this trip. This trip is open to adults and to families with kiddos ages 9 and up. We find that below 9 just tends to be really hard on the kids, and the parentals with them end up really just investing in their kids. And so it just ends up being a tougher thing. If you have a specific circumstance that you want to talk through, happy to talk it through. We find that 9 is kind of the tipping point for when a kid is like semi-trustworthy. I mean, let's not fool ourselves, but when a kid is semi-trustworthy and also sort of able to assimilate this wide set of experiences they have never been a part of before, right? Like it's a lot to get your head around. And then any unaccompanied minors under 18, there is a high school trip that if we have enough kids, we'll run, enough youths, we'll run a trip within a trip during week 1. So we're hopefully, if we have enough people, we'll run 2 trips March 30th through April 6th, and April 6th through April 13th. The first week is when like all the local schools have spring break, and so that's when we'll have the youth trip as well. That's a good fit for unaccompanied minors who'll travel with youth pastor, and then also it's really nice if you have youth in your family, high schoolers. It's fun for them to be able to be involved in kind of both sides of it. It's like can be kind of the best of both worlds because you get to travel with your kiddo, but also they get to split out and maybe do a work group that's a painting group that's just the youth or something like that. It can be really fun for them. All right, what did I miss?
Passports.
Passport. Well, next steps. Here's a set of next steps. Again, I'll email this out, but next steps, if this is something that's interesting to you, first of all, make sure I have your email address and I'll send all of this out. The cost of the trip runs about $1,400. Right now, airfare is looking like $800, which is just insanity. So we're hoping that that comes in, it can come down, but turns out I'm not in charge of that. So, but if I was, it would not be $800. So really that's the lion's share of the trip.
So is that fee in addition to the airfare?
No, that covers everything. So your $1,400 covers everything in the trip. You really, except for like extra Cokes at the convenience store and souvenirs, like it covers all of so that's all of your transportation, your airfare, all of your in-country transportation, your hotel, and all of your meals. It also covers all of the expenses for like our supplies, so paint and beads to make bracelets, and it covers all of that. So that's all of your costs all in, and then depending on airfare, hopefully we can bring that in, but we'll just see. Airfare's not in a great place right now. We're going down we're spending November in Colima, and we're paying like $1,000 a person to fly down. It's insane. So next steps, of course, think, pray, consider, talk to your people about if this is a good fit for you and for your loved ones right now. Also, if you're thinking this may be a good fit for you, just do your apply for your passport or your renewal now. If your passport expires anytime before like mid-2024, with government shutdowns and then these passport processing times have been crazy. We've been seeing like 2 to 3 months just for renewals. So just do it now. If you think this might be a fit for you, just do your passport application or renewal now. If you have a passport that expires before mid-2024. And then applications, I've got applications here. I'll also email them out. Applications are due at the end of the month, and then we'll do a series of conversations just to get to know you, why you're excited about this trip, any questions that you have. It's a nice chance to just do a one-on-one or family conversation. And hopefully by kind of that 3rd or 4th week of November, we'll be pretty set on the teams. Yes, ma'am.
My husband and I usually do like a Christmas concert in December, and we were wondering if we could do one night, have it be a benefit concert to go toward Colima.
Love it.
But we're just trying to find a space. So
yeah, that opens up a whole Pandora's box of just awesome ideas.
Yeah.
So fundraising. So we do try to. What we say about cost, I'll get there. What we do say about cost is be real about the cost. Right, there are very real costs. Like there's paint to buy, and there are airline tickets to purchase. Right, there are very real costs. Be real about the costs. Don't let the cost stop you. We have always found a way through with people who feel called and excited about this trip. We've always found a way through some combination of personal fundraising and group fundraising, and they save up, and we've always found a way through. So be real about the costs. Don't let the cost stop you. We really let group fundraising be group led. And so we find that it takes lots of different forms every year. And so sometimes it'll be like babysitting nights, sometimes, really unique ideas. And so what we'll do is we'll basically let y'all come forward with the ideas that you have for fundraising, whether it's something you want to do to help pay for the cost of your trip, or something for the group. The way that fundraising works is that so all funds I'll say all funds are pooled. Obviously, if you're raising money to pay for your trip, like, we just keep track of that kind of off the books, but, and so we pay for the cost of the trip, we pay for the materials that we use, you know, that we need for the projects while we're there, and then everything else, at the end, kind of once everything settles out, we just send everything else down as a donation, to Hogarty and More. So we really just, every year, basically just essentially zero out the account, and send everything down as a donation, for just the sustaining. It turns out raising a whole bunch of kids is really expensive. And so, we send that down as a donation at the end. And so some people fundraise for the cost of their trip, awesome. Some people fundraise for the group. Some people just fundraise for the orphanage because they just want to raise more money for the orphanage. Like, there's no wrong mix of those activities. And then in terms of specific locations, let's just talk afterwards and see what we can figure out. Very long answer to an uncomplicated question. Other topics? Yeah.
I have a quick question. You might have already answered this before we came in, but, so it says 2 trip options depending on demand. So is the March 30th through April 6th like the for sure one, and April 6th will be the on demand?
Probably.
Or- Okay.
Yeah, so probably. So the April, or the March 30th to April 6th is when kids are off of school. That tends to be the higher demand trip, just because families want to bring kids who have trouble not going to school. Our kids don't have trouble not going to school, but, and so that tends to be the higher demand one. We hope that we have enough. What we really need to get to is, like, it gets a little challenging with, like, 15 is kind of the sweet spot. And so if we're way under 15, then we'll combine trips. Otherwise, it just gets hard. You just kind of don't have enough hands to do things. So we try to stick around 15. So as long as we have 15 or more per trip, then I think we'll be able to run 2 trips.
And are you leading both, or do you have somebody?
Great question. Wait,
Okay.
It depends how much time Jeff can give me off. We have a set of 4 folks who have run trips in the past, who, so me and Steve, like, for instance, last year, Steve went on both weeks. Steve was a participant in week 1, and then Steve led week 2, as an example. And then Dan and Francisco are both willing to help out too. And so all of that, who does what week, is slushy right now because we need to see what actually ends up happening. But we do have a set of leaders who are equipped. So.
So you'll know by like the end of the month if you're doing 1 trip or 2?
So if you can only do one of the weeks, just indicate it on your application. Because that's important information. Some people can only do 1 week or the other week. And then on the application, it'll also say like either week, no preference. And so that just helps us get the information of like who, because of kids' schedules or work schedules or whatever, can only do 1 week or the other week, because that's important information for us as we try to figure it out.
So like
Yeah.
the hotel rooms, how many do they sleep?
Oh, great, yeah. So the hotel rooms, there are 2 configurations. There's one configuration with 2 double beds, and there's one configuration with 2 single beds. So, we end up doing that kind of towards the end, like figuring out rooms towards the end, because again, it's kind of like a no right or wrong situation there. When our kids were little, we would just have our kids bunk with us. As our kids got older, it's actually been a really fun experience for them to either bunk with another adult, like they'll do, because we'll have like single adults traveling, and that actually has ended up being kind of a cool situation. Or with 2 youth, and we just kind of nestle them in the middle of the rooms. So there's a lot of flexibility there, but the room configurations are either 2 double beds or 2 single beds. So married couples have an extra bed for their luggage, but if they don't have kids bunking with them. And that, shoot, there was something you made me, oh yes. So, part of what you're committing to, if you choose this, is a preparatory time. So, we'll spend time together, January through March, in a series of meetings. Once we kind of know how the team is forming, we'll figure out a schedule that makes sense for people and that threads the line of everyone's work schedules and vacation schedules. And it's never perfect, but we do a pretty good job with it. And so, we really do, the meetings matter for three reasons. One, it's really important for us to gel as a team, to get to know each other, to learn about each other. Two, it gives us a foundation, a shared foundation for how we serve, how we speak, why we're doing this. And then three, it's practical planning, right? It's like, hey, which beaded bracelets are we doing on day 2 crafts? And are you bringing the beads or am I, right? And so it gives us the chance to do that practical planning. So there'll be a series of meetings. We also have talked about this year maybe doing more like an overnight or like a full day rather than a series of meetings. So we'll kind of see what works with people's schedules. But either way, it's a real commitment. It's really, really important for all three of those reasons. Yeah.
So with those meetings, like we have kids we bring along, bring the kids or just
Yeah,
us
everybody.
representatives?
Everybody who's going will come to the meetings. We try to make them engaging. There's food. It's always food. So everybody who's going on the trip, the ideal is that everybody who's attending will go. And then we often have kind of extra people, like sometimes there'll be a spouse who's not going, but who comes to the meetings, which is awesome because the people who are staying in the US and making this possible are just as important as the people who are going. And so we'll often have, extra kids who are hanging out at meetings or extra adults, and that's great. We love that. And people are always welcome, especially if sometimes if there are youth who are going without their parents. A lot of times the parents will come to the meetings because they want to be a part of the preparatory process, and that's great. We love that. Long answer, simple question. But we want kids to feel a part of that, right? And to have faces that are familiar and feel part of the team because they are.
So I know you kind of went over the schedule,
Yeah.
but what are there set times, like wake up times,
Whoa.
ending times?
Whoa, that's a deep question. There will be set times. It flexes as it needs to. Once we know the schedule, so we really run by the orphanage's time and where they need us when. And so what'll happen is we'll work with them to figure out activity times that work for the houses that they want us to be at, and that kind of drives the rest of the day's schedule. Because once we know where they want us when to do activities, then sometimes we'll do work projects in the morning, activities with the kids in the afternoon. Sometimes we'll swap that. It just depends on what works for them. And that'll drive the day's schedule. The daily schedule is pretty stable, like Monday to Friday. We'll usually meet for breakfast around 8, somewhere between 8 and 8:30, depending on the day and if we have to drive somewhere. We'll do breakfasts. We do about 50-50 breakfast in the hotel restaurant and just market breakfast, which is like just cereal and fruit and yogurt, which is, they're both great. It's nice to have simple breakfast sometimes. So usually we'll meet up at about 8:30. We'll have breakfast. We'll talk about any logistics we need to that we didn't cover, and then usually we need to be somewhere around 9:15. Painting with very broad strokes. Lunch is provided by the orphanage, which is a real privilege and delight that they do for us. And so lunch is usually about 2. And then we'll usually kind of depends, are we doing activities in the morning or the afternoon, but usually we'll wrap up like 4:35, gives us time to get back to the hotel, have a little siesta, a little swim in the pool, definitely a shower or 2, and then we'll go out for whatever the evening activity is. Dinner is usually late, right? Everything kind of skews later, so dinner is usually 7. We're usually back like 9:30. They're long days, and so it's just good to be aware of. With kiddos, our kids, probably up until they were like 13, we would come back, we'd bring them back in the afternoon for a nap. Because they, you know, they weren't used to 7 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. days, especially in the heat, and especially the cognitive load of like new culture and language and everything, right? It's a lot, and so, you know, we would do a nap with them. It was probably a better way for me to run my days. But we would do a nap with them every day because it was just like that's what we needed to do to have a pleasant experience. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. And then one day for both trips, we'll do something special with the kids. So sometimes that's a hike. We'll go out to the country for a hike. If the kids are off school, sometimes we're able to get them all. Like last year, we were able to rent out a big set of pools, and we had 300 people at these pools for all day, which was really cool. So we try to do something special at some time during the week so that we have some time to, first of all, sort of get out and see more of the country, and also to spend more time with the kids. Yeah.
How many orphans are there?
There's about 120 kids in care. It fluctuates. But yeah, and then it's roughly 50% are through state care and about 50% are voluntary relinquishment. Or unofficial relinquishment. Yeah.
Have you ever had anybody from this group adopt any of the kids there, or be allowed to do that?
Yeah, adoption, international adoption, local adoption and international adoption in Mexico are very, very rare. It is very, very challenging to adopt in Mexico, period. It is essentially impossible to adopt from Mexico, outside of Mexico, to internationally adopt from Mexico. So there are a few kids in care who have been adopted, but no one internationally. International adoption from Mexico is essentially unheard of, unless you have, Mexican citizenry. Even then, very, very challenging. It's just not a culturally normative activity.
Let's do that.
It's really hard. It's a really, and that's an important, we do spend a lot of time talking about culture, but if you know anything about the Latinx culture, family, extended family is incredibly important. And so, if you have a kid who's come into care, it really means they got no one in their lives, right? Because if there was an aunt or an uncle or a godparent or an older sibling who could possibly take care of them, that's who would be caring for them. And so, if you're a kid in Mexico or really any Latinx country who's coming into group care, you've had a really hard situation, and you've had a situation where everything in your culture and your upbringing says your family will be there for you, and that has not been your reality. And so it's a real hard thing culturally for these kids. Any kid in care, it's a really hard thing. With Hispanic culture, it's incredibly hard. Yeah.
So you saying that financially, so if they had the finances, the family, because there's family, they're just not saying that.
Sometimes there's family, sometimes there's not. About half the kids are there through state care, so they've entered care through the same reasons that kids enter state care in the U.S. Sort of globally true. And about half the kids are there through voluntary relinquishment. So often it will be that there is a family member. Either the parents may be in rehab or some kind of inpatient situation where they are unable to care for the kids, but the state hasn't gotten involved, or there is a grandparent or great aunt or something who is around but who is just not capable of caring for a kiddo, with the day in, day out care that they require. And so there are some kids who will occasionally, like over Holy Week, who may go back with a grandparent for Holy Week or something like that when they're out of school, something like that. That does happen sometimes. It is the exception. Yeah.
Throughout the week, do you have any faith-based discussions or speeches or
With the kids or as a group?
either?
So we, so Hogar de Amor is a Christian orphanage run by a Christian church, And so they do a lot of stuff with the kids. I mean, they do prayer before meals, they do little Bible study and worship times. The kids, Grupo Amor also has a private school, and so they do, so it's a Christian school, and so they do faith-based education through school. They go to church on Sundays, they do the Sunday school youth group thing, and so the kids have a lot of exposure to the love of Jesus. Now you gotta remember, kids are coming and going all the time, right? And so, I mean, they try to provide a stable environment, but there are kids who are coming into care and there are kids who are leaving care, right? So any given kid that you're talking to may be 3 years behind in school because they haven't been going to school, right? May not have had exposure to the love of Jesus in a consistent way because they came into care just a few months ago, right? And so any given kid is going to be living their own individual and unique story. Unless we have very enthusiastic Spanish speakers, we don't tend to lead any faith-based or really any activities besides like sports and games, which require delightfully little language. Just be like, kick it there, right? Like we can do that. And so we don't tend to lead any faith-based education in the orphanages, and honestly, they have wonderfully qualified people to do that. We have had some people who have done that over the years, and it's really, really fun. We've had a case where there's also, Grupo Amor also does a men's and women's restoration program, so largely substance abuse. So we've had people who have a history with the substance abuse and recovery movement, spend time with them and talk with them. We have had people who have strong Spanish skills and really love teaching kids do like a nighttime little, like kind of lead one of their Bible studies at night. But that's exceptional and it's certainly not an expectation. In terms of activities that we do as a group, this is a faith-based team and a faith-based trip. Our stance as CenterPoint Church and my stance leading is that if you can read through what's in the application and be like, yeah, I'm cool with that, right? Which is not necessarily the same as, yes, I passionately believe everything here, right? That's not a requirement for this trip. What matters for this trip is that you can read through this and be like, you know what, I can be on board with that. We'll pray as a group. We'll do a kind of like a meditation in the mornings. I mean, we do talk about the spiritual impact of this trip. I would say if you're, it's a challenge by choice situation. If that is not, if that's not a comfortable thing for you, then you're welcome to sit and absorb. And for those who are willing to maybe share a thought in the morning or a favorite Bible verse or something like that, there are opportunities to do that. Fair? Okay. But yeah, I would see anybody, or if you're thinking about bringing anybody on this trip, I would read carefully through this and just make sure you can be cool with this. Oh, but there is no requirement. It's probably obvious, but there's no requirement to be a member of CenterPoint. First of all, I don't even know what it means to be a member of CenterPoint Church, but there's no
There's a class about that.
there's a class about that. But there's no requirement to be a member or even a regular attender of this church, as long as you're able to be cool with you and attend preparatory meetings. Okay, I gotta say, y'all had, I think, the most in-depth questions of any group, so gold for the recording. So gold star. Anything else? I'm happy. Every piece of paper you have has all of my contact information on it, so you're always welcome to reach out. But let me close this in prayer really fast.